One of the highlights of our history, hope you remember, were the religious, the God-fearing, the Christian heritage that we have, thanks to the faithful, dedicated men and women in our pioneer days. One of those classes of people were called circuit riders. And they would ride their horse from place to place and station to station and marry people, and preach the gospel. But he just rode in on his horse. Here he is. I'll let him introduce himself.
Greetings from the 18th century. Glad to be with you today. Thanks to our science department at Indiana Wesleyan Academy, I have myself and another visitor here this morning. Of course, as most of you know, in the pioneer days, circuit riders were the primary way that many of the churches were planted, especially in our Wesleyan Methodist area. You can drive out any direction from Boonville and you'll see, especially Methodist churches, founded 1800, 1850, and so forth. That's because of the circuit riders that spread the gospel to the west in the pioneer times. Well, they would use a traveling tube with an older person and a younger person, so the older person could disciple the younger person and train him. And interestingly, in some churches, such as United Methodist Church, you'll still see where one pastor will do 2 or 3 services in a day. So it's still a process you will see. Now, the scripture I'd like to share today, as we share about our past. Pray this out on my Microsoft Word, 1850 edition, in case you're wondering where it came from. The scripture's from Ezekiel 33:6. And it says, "If the lookout sees the sword coming, but doesn't blow the trumpet to warn the people, when the sword comes, it takes away any of them. They are taken away in their sin. But I'll hold the lookout responsible for their blood." See, our denomination's roots begin in a quest for personal holy living, balanced with a commitment to social change within the world also. Our new General Superintendent, Dr. Joanne Lyon, has called for the same thing again in this century, a love for others balanced with a concern for the things that are going on in the world. Early parts of our denomination were characterized by vigorous opposition to slavery. John Wesley, our founder, his last letter was written just a few days before his death. He wrote this to William Wilberforce. You may have seen the movie Amazing Grace. You saw a portrayal of William Wilberforce in this movie. He told him, "Go on in the name of God and in the power of His might, till even American slavery, the vilest that ever saw the sun, shall vanish away before it." You see, early Wesleyans, they tested the spiritual condition of the church by its commitment to reform and its involvement in social justice issues of the day. To them, it wasn't just enough, as James tells us, to say things, but to do things. They believed unless you opposed it, what was unjust for your brother, then you weren't showing the marks of a true Christian. Arndt, Scott, Luther Lee, and others, some were African Americans, many women were involved and preached from their pulpits on a constant basis against the evils of slavery. As Sue mentioned before, today is Freedom Sunday, observed by World Hope International and others among different denominations. Today there will be some 4,600 churches join with us to observe this. And that goal is to observe the goal of human trafficking, a type of slavery we still see today. UNICEF says there are as many as 2 million children are victims of the sex trafficking. World Hope International tells us at least every year 100,000 American children become victims of this, through things such as internet and different things. Numerous ministries and churches around the country are taking on this tragedy in their communities. We've seen the results of it. This Independence Day, World Hope is partnering with the American churches to raise awareness of this trafficking and connect compassionate hearts in the United States, asking churches to pray for these ministries and support these ministries. It's estimated that there are some 27 million men, women, and children enslaved worldwide. They make the clothes we wear. Those electronics are like to buy so cheap in some of the stores we go to. In the early days, the early Wesley Methodists, the sugar was made by slaves. They buy it elsewhere. If they couldn't find it elsewhere, they do it without. I realize in this day and age it's much harder to boycott and do these things, but we can still be aware of what's going on and pray about it. We can see a lot of similarities between things that are happening here around the world, the United States, what went on just a few hundred years ago. Once again, human life has lost its value to many whose God is money. From the 27 million enslaved worldwide, to the 4,000 infants killed daily in their mother's womb with our high court's blessing. And don't ever think the high court is the final law, or we would still have the Dred Scott decision once said slavery was okay. Sometimes as Christians and voters we do have to speak up when things are wrong. But listen to some of the leading causes of death in the United States. This might surprise you. Accidents, auto and everything together, 118,000. Stroke, 128,000. Cancer, 567,000. Heart disease, 599,000. Abortion, 1.2 billion. This is a death that's 100% preventable. Sobering, isn't it? Our prayers count, how we spend our money counts, and yes, even how we vote has eternal consequences. As Ezekiel told us, our church fathers believed that when it came to tyranny or social injustice, or the government tell us how we must speak or what we must say as Christians, that a silent pulpit was then indeed a complicit pulpit. Yes, these things do matter. You see, as God told Cain, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. So, what can we do? First, pray. God will show us what we can do and how we can come involved in these things that still matter as a church. Because even though primarily, as Wesleyans, we preach the gospel, we also believe that unless we can do things that make things better for our fellow men and women, then we haven't really done much at all. But I'll leave you with the words of William Wilberforce. I mentioned him earlier. He protested slavery in English government, he was a part of the English government, for almost 30 years. He never gave up. He would bring the resolution every year. But he had wise words that I think speak to us today. Once you have seen, you may choose to turn away, but you can never again say that you have not heard. Leave those words with you today. As a church and as a nation, Lord bless us again and show us what we can do.
Amen.
Thank you, my brother, for preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. Thank you for preaching the message that we are free, that we can be free. We can be free from sin and free from all these social evils of our day, as our brother preached. But it's not free, just freedom from things. It's freedom in something. It's freedom in love. And John Wesley, who was born in 1703, died in 1791, that was the message he preached. Well, I don't know that he looks as peculiar as I look today, but it was something similar to this if you see the pictures. But for some reason, when John Wesley went out and preached in the cemeteries, from the tombstones and from the fields of England and America down in Georgia, people listened to him. And they listened to him because he didn't preach a freedom of bondage or a religion of bondage. He preached a religion of Jesus Christ, free from sin, but free in love. And I'm thankful today that the heritage that we have from John Wesley back in England, from the Bible before that, from the apostles in the Bible, all through human history, our heritage is freedom in Jesus Christ.
Amen.
And it's freedom from,